The Apache woman stood at the edge of the canyon with blood dried on her temple, and her belongings scattered at her feet when the cowboy first saw her in the fading light of 1877. Caleb Frost had been riding for 3 days straight, pushing his mare harder than he should have, trying to outrun memories that clung to him like desert dust. The Montana Territory stretched endlessly in every direction, and he had hoped that somewhere in all that emptiness he might find peace. Instead, he found her. She did not turn when his horse approached, though he knew she had heard him. Her back remained straight, her dark hair loose and tangled around her shoulders, and in her hand she held nothing but a small leather pouch. Everything else lay strewn across the rocky ground as if someone had emptied her life out like water from a canteen. "Madam," Caleb called out, his voice rough from days without much use. "You all right?" Finally she turned. Her face was striking, with high cheekbones and eyes that held a depth of pain he recognized immediately. A bruise darkened her left cheek, and the cut on her temple looked recent. She studied him with an expression that was neither fearful nor welcoming, just exhausted. "I am alive," she said, her English clear but accented. "That is all I can claim." Caleb dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible. He had lived among enough different peoples to know that trust was earned, not given. "Looks like you've had some trouble." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Trouble? Yes, that is one word for it." She gestured to the scattered items. "My people cast me out. Everything I owned they threw from the cliff. Most of it broke on the rocks below." The words hit Caleb harder than they should have. He knew about being cast out, about having the door closed on everything familiar. His own family had turned their backs on him 2 years ago when he refused to fight for a cause he did not believe in. His father had told him that cowards had no place in the Frost household, and his mother had wept but said nothing in his defense. Why? The question came out before he could stop it, though he knew it was probably too personal, too soon. She looked at him for a long moment, as if deciding whether he was worth the truth. "I fell in love with the wrong man, a man from another tribe, one we have been at war with for 3 generations. My father is a chief. He said I betrayed our people by giving my heart to an enemy." Her voice cracked slightly. "When I refused to renounce him, they held a council. My own father spoke the words of banishment." Caleb felt something twist in his chest. "Where is he now? The man you loved, dead?" The word fell like a stone. "His people killed him when they discovered our meetings. They thought he was a traitor too." She wrapped her arms around herself. "So we both lost everything, but he lost more." The sun was sinking fast, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed too beautiful for such sorrow. Caleb looked at this woman who had lost everything and made a decision that would change both their lives. "Then my people are yours," he said quietly. She stared at him. "What? You heard me right. I do not have much. A horse, some supplies, and a stubborn refusal to give up. But whatever I have, it is yours too. You should not be alone out here." "You do not know me," she protested, though he could see something like hope flickering in her eyes. "I could be a danger to you. My people might come after anyone who helps me." Caleb shrugged. "My people already cast me out too. Guess that makes us both orphans of a sort." He extended his hand. "Name is Caleb Frost. I was heading to Montana City to see if I could find work. You are welcome to ride with me if you want." She looked at his hand for a long time before taking it. Her grip was firm despite everything she had been through. "Gentle Elk, that is what my people called me. My birth name was Gamua, but after the English came, they could not pronounce it well." She paused. "What do I call myself now that I have no people?" "How about you keep being Gentle Elk until you decide otherwise?" Caleb suggested. "Names are important. Should not throw them away just because other people did not appreciate what they meant." Something in her expression softened. "You are strange for a white man." "I get that a lot," Caleb admitted. He began gathering her scattered belongings. Most were indeed broken, but he found a few items that had survived. A beaded pouch, a small knife with an intricately carved handle, and a blanket that had caught on a scrub brush instead of falling all the way down. Gentle Elk watched him collect these pieces of her former life with an expression he could not quite read. "Why are you helping me?" Caleb straightened up, holding the items carefully. "Because somebody should have helped me when I needed it, and nobody did. Figured I could do better than the example set for me." He walked back to his horse and began securing the items to his saddle. "Besides, Montana territory is big and empty and lonely as hell. Company would be nice, even if we are both running from something." "I am not running," Gentle Elk said sharply. "I was thrown away." "Right, sorry," Caleb turned to face her. "But either way the result is the same. We are both alone, and that is not a good way to be out here." She considered this, then nodded slowly. "Montana City, that is where you are going." "It is a town. Has people, jobs, possibly a future that does not involve dying alone in the wilderness. Not much of a plan, but it is what I have." "Then I will go with you to this Montana City," Gentle Elk decided. "But I will not be a burden. I can hunt, track, and survive better than most white men I have met." Caleb grinned. "I believe you. Come on, let's make camp before it gets full dark. We can start fresh in the morning." They found a sheltered spot among some rocks where a small spring provided water. Caleb had coffee and some dried meat in his supplies, and Gentle Elk proved her competence by building a fire that produced minimal smoke and maximum heat. They sat on opposite sides of the flames at first, two wounded souls trying to figure out how to be near another person again. "You said your people cast you out too," Gentle Elk said after they had eaten. "What did you do?" Caleb poked at the fire with a stick. "Refused to fight in their war. My family was Confederate, believed strongly in the cause. I did not. Thought the whole thing was wrong, especially the part about owning other people. When they tried to force me to enlist, I left instead. My father said I was dead to him." He laughed without humor. "Funny how family can just decide you do not exist anymore." "It is not funny," Gentle Elk said softly. "It is the worst pain there is, worse than any wound." "Yes," Caleb agreed. "Yes, it is." They fell silent, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind that happens when two people recognize their shared suffering without needing to dissect it further. The stars came out in their thousands, filling the sky with cold light, and somewhere in the distance a coyote howled. "I loved him," Gentle Elk said suddenly. "Nayati, that was his name. It means fighter, and he was. But he was also kind." He laughed easily. "He made me feel like the world was bigger than the boundaries our peoples had drawn." She pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders. "We had been meeting secretly for almost a year. We were planning to run away together, to go somewhere neither of our peoples could find us. But someone saw us. Someone told." "I am sorry," Caleb said, and he meant it. "He died 3 days ago. I was cast out yesterday. It feels like a lifetime." She looked across the fire at him. "You are the first person who has shown me any kindness since then." "Then people around here have forgotten how to be decent," Caleb responded. "You loved someone. That is not a crime, no matter what your father says." Gentle Elk smiled just a little, and it transformed her face. "You are definitely strange for a white man. I will take that as a compliment." They settled in for the night, Caleb insisting Gentle Elk take his bedroll while he made do with a saddle blanket. She protested but eventually accepted, too exhausted to argue much. As Caleb lay looking up at the stars, he wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had been alone for so long, had convinced himself he preferred it that way. Now here was this woman who had suffered losses that made his own seem small, and he had promised to share his life with her. It was reckless. It was probably foolish. But it also felt like the first right thing he had done in 2 years. Morning came cold and clear. They broke camp efficiently, and Gentle Elk proved she could ride well, even sharing the horse with their supplies redistributed. Caleb walked alongside for much of the morning to spare the mare the extra weight, and Gentle Elk matched his pace without complaint. As they traveled, they talked. It started with practical things like the best route to Montana City and what kind of work might be available, but gradually it deepened. Caleb found himself telling her about his childhood in Virginia, about the farm his family had owned and the slaves who worked it. He told her about the woman named Clara who had practically raised him, how she had taught him to read using a Bible she had hidden, how she had been sold when he was 12 because his father needed cash. That was when I started to understand, Caleb explained. Clara was not just gone. She was someone's property, sold like a horse or a plow. I asked my mother where Clara went, and she told me not to get attached to things that were not permanent. Things. She called her a thing. Gentle Elk listened without interruption, and when he finished she said, "Your people and mine are not so different in some ways. We also took captives, made them part of our tribes whether they wanted to or not. We also believed we knew the right way to live and everyone else was wrong." "Do you think everyone is just bad then?" Caleb asked. "If all people do terrible things?" "No," Gentle Elk said firmly. "I think people are taught to do terrible things and some of them wake up and realize it is wrong, like you did, like I tried to do by loving across the boundaries they set." She was quiet for a moment. "I think the measure of a person is what they do after they wake up." It was the most hopeful thing Caleb had heard in a long time. They reached Montana City 4 days later, and it was bigger than Caleb had expected. The town sprawled along a river valley, a collection of wooden buildings and muddy streets that promised civilization and all its complications. A sign proclaimed the population to be nearly 800 souls, which seemed optimistic but possible. "This is it," Caleb said, feeling suddenly nervous. "Think we can make it work here?" Gentle Elk surveyed the town with an unreadable expression. "We will find out, but Caleb," she waited until he looked at her. "Thank you for bringing me here, for not leaving me alone." Something warm spread through his chest. "We are in this together now. Whatever happens." They rode into town slowly, attracting stares as they passed. A white cowboy and an Apache woman traveling together was unusual enough to draw attention, and Caleb could feel the weight of eyes following them. He kept his expression neutral and his hand away from his gun, not wanting to appear threatening. They found a boarding house run by a stern-looking woman named Mrs. Patricia Holder, who looked them over with sharp eyes. "I do not rent to trouble," she announced. "We are not trouble," Caleb assured her. "Just 2 people looking for a fresh start. I can pay for 2 rooms for a week while we look for work." Mrs. Holder's gaze lingered on Gentle Elk. "She Apache?" "Yes," Gentle Elk answered for herself. "Is that a problem?" "Depends on whether you are running from something that is going to show up at my door," Mrs. Holder said bluntly. "The only thing I am running from is the past," Gentle Elk replied. "And that cannot be outrun, only outlived." Something in Mrs. Holder's expression shifted. "Well now, that is either wisdom or weariness talking." She pulled out a ledger. "I have 2 rooms available, $3 each for the week, meals included. Rules are no drinking, no fighting, and no entertaining guests after 9 o'clock. Caleb paid for both rooms, watching his small savings shrink. He would need to find work soon, but for now having a real bed and a roof seemed worth the cost. That evening at dinner, they met some of the other boarders. There was an older prospector named Samuel who had stories about every mountain in Montana, a young school teacher named Miss Ann who blushed when she talked, and a traveling salesman named Mr. Gregory who seemed suspicious of everyone. The conversation was polite but strained, with several long silences that felt heavy with unasked questions. After the meal, Caleb and Gentle Elk walked through town, getting a sense of the place. There was a general store, a blacksmith, 2 saloons, a church, and various other businesses that served the miners and ranchers who worked the surrounding area. It seemed like a town trying to become something more than it was, full of ambition and rough edges. "What kind of work will you look for?" Gentle Elk asked as they walked. "Anything honest," Caleb said. "I can handle horses pretty well and I have done ranch work. I can sew tan hides and make medicines from plants, but I do not know if anyone here will want those things from an Apache woman." Her voice was matter-of-fact, but he heard the worry underneath. "Then we will convince them," Caleb said with more confidence than he felt. "People are people. They need help and we can provide it. Eventually they will see past everything else." Gentle Elk looked at him with something like fondness. "You have a lot of faith in people for someone whose people rejected him." "Maybe that is why," Caleb said. "I have to believe better is possible, or what was the point of leaving?" They stood on a small bridge overlooking the river, watching the water flow past in the fading light. The town glowed with lamplight behind them, and the mountains rose dark against the sky ahead. It felt like standing between 2 worlds, neither of which fully wanted them. "Caleb," Gentle Elk said softly, "what if this does not work?" "Then we try somewhere else," he replied. "But it will work. It has to." She nodded, though he could see doubt in her eyes. He understood it. They were both so tired of losing, so afraid to hope that something might actually go right. The next morning, Caleb began his search for work. He started at the stable, offering his services to the owner, a gruff man named Thomas Wright, who looked him over critically. "Can you shoe a horse?" Thomas asked. "Yes, sir." "Can you handle one that does not want to be handled?" "Better than most." Thomas grunted. "We will see. I need someone to break a Mustang that came in yesterday, wild as they come. You can do that without killing yourself or the horse. The job is yours. $20 a month plus room in the loft." It was a test, and probably a dangerous one, but Caleb needed the work. "Show me the horse." The Mustang was a beautiful sorrel with a white blaze and eyes that rolled with fear and fury. She was young, maybe 3 years old, and had clearly never been properly handled. Someone had managed to get her into a pen, but that was about it. Caleb spent an hour just sitting near the pen, not trying to approach, just letting the horse get used to his presence. Thomas watched from the stable door, arms crossed, expression skeptical. "You planning to break her by boring her to death?" Thomas called out. "Planning to break her by making her trust me," Caleb called back. "Force just makes them mean." He could hear Thomas muttering, but the man did not interfere. Caleb kept his voice low and steady, talking to the mare about nothing in particular, letting her hear that he was not a threat. Gradually, her ears swiveled toward him. Gradually, the panic in her eyes dimmed to wariness. It took 3 hours before she let him touch her nose through the fence. It took another 2 before he could enter the pen without her trying to kick him. Thomas had long since gone back to work, but when Caleb finally led the mare out of the pen with nothing but a rope halter, the older man was there to see it. "Well, I will be damned," Thomas said. "How did you do that?" "Patience," Caleb said simply. "She just needed to know I was not going to hurt her." "You are hired," Thomas declared. "Start tomorrow. For now, get that horse settled in a stall and come by in the morning." Caleb left the stable feeling like maybe things were starting to turn around. He found Gentle Elk back at the boarding house, and she looked up eagerly when he entered. "I got work," he announced, At the stable, it is not much, but it is a start." Her smile was brilliant. "That is wonderful. I have news too. Mrs. Holder needs someone to help with sewing and mending. She said she would pay me 50 cents a day to do alterations for the boarders and anyone else who needs it." They grinned at each other like children who had just gotten away with something impossible. For the first time since they met, the weight of exile seemed a little lighter. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Caleb worked at the stable, proving his worth with every horse he handled. Thomas turned out to be fair despite his gruff manner, and he appreciated Caleb's skill with difficult animals. Gentle Elk sewed and mended, and gradually people began to accept her presence. It helped that she was talented and charged reasonable prices. It helped more that she was polite without being servile, and she did not tolerate disrespect. They fell into the habit of taking evening walks together, exploring the town and the surrounding areas. Sometimes they talked constantly, sharing stories and thoughts. Sometimes they walked in comfortable silence, just enjoying each other's company. Caleb found himself looking forward to those walks more than anything else in his day. One evening, about 6 weeks after their arrival, they sat by the river watching the sunset. The air was warm, and summer was settling into the valley with lazy contentment. "I have been thinking," Gentle Elk said, "about what it means that we both lost our peoples." "What about it?" Caleb asked. "I think maybe we did not lose them. Maybe they lost us." She picked up a small stone and tossed it into the water. "My father chose his pride over his daughter." "Your father chose his cause over his son. They made those choices. We just survived them." Caleb considered this. "So you are saying we should not feel guilty for being cast out?" "I am saying maybe we should stop thinking of ourselves as cast out and start thinking of ourselves as free," Gentle Elk replied. "We can choose who we are now. We can build something new." He looked at her profile in the fading light, at the strength in her features and the determination in her eyes, and felt something shift inside him. It was not quite love yet, too new and uncertain for that, but it was definitely the foundation of it. "I am glad I found you that day," Caleb said quietly. Gentle Elk turned to look at him. "I am glad you did not ride past." The moment hung between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Then Gentle Elk stood, brushing off her skirt. "We should get back. Mrs. Holder will have dinner ready soon." They walked back slowly, and Caleb noticed that somehow their hands had found each other. Neither of them commented on it, but neither let go until they reached the boarding house. Summer deepened into August, and Montana City grew hotter and dustier. Caleb had been promoted to assistant stable manager, which came with a small raise and more responsibility. Gentle Elk had so many sewing requests that Mrs. Holder had to turn people away. They were building lives here, real lives with work and purpose and hope. But the past was never as far away as they wanted to believe. It was a Tuesday morning when the 3 Apache men rode into town. Caleb was at the stable when he heard the commotion, and something cold settled in his stomach before he even knew why. He walked out to the street and saw them. Warriors in traditional dress, armed and proud, drawing every eye in town. And then he saw Gentle Elk standing frozen in front of the general store, her face drained of color. Caleb was moving before he thought, crossing the street in long strides. He reached Gentle Elk just as the lead warrior dismounted. The man was tall and broad-shouldered, with streaks of gray in his dark hair and eyes that could have been carved from stone. "Gamuwa," the man said, using her birth name. "Your father sends us to bring you home." "I have no father," Gentle Elk said, her voice shaking but firm. "He made that clear when he cast me out." "Things have changed," the warrior continued. "The man you loved, his people want war over his death. They blame us." Your father needs you to come back to testify that Nayati's death was not by our hand." "I do not know whose hand killed him," Gentle Elk said. "I was not there. But you can speak to his character, to your relationship. You can help prevent war." The warrior's expression softened slightly. "Please, Gamua, people will die if you do not come." Caleb felt Gentle Elk trembling beside him. He wanted to tell these men to leave, to never come back, but he knew this was not his decision to make. This was her past coming to claim her, and she had to choose how to answer it. "Give me time to think," Gentle Elk said finally. "Come back tomorrow." The warrior looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Gentle Elk's expression stopped him. He nodded slowly. "Tomorrow, but we cannot wait longer than that. The situation grows more dangerous every day." The three men rode out of town, and the gathered crowd slowly dispersed. Caleb put his hand on Gentle Elk's shoulder. "Come on, let's go somewhere we can talk." They ended up at their spot by the river, and for a long time Gentle Elk just sat there, staring at the water. Caleb waited, knowing she needed to work through this on her own terms. "He wants me to save them," she finally said. "After everything, after throwing me away like I meant nothing, he wants me to save them." "You do not owe them anything," Caleb said carefully. "They made their choice. I know." "I know that." Gentle Elk wrapped her arms around herself. "But innocent people will die if there is a war. People who had nothing to do with what happened to me or Nayati, children, elders, they will all suffer." Caleb's heart sank because he knew what she was going to decide. "You are going to go back." "I have to at least try," Gentle Elk said, tears streaming down her face. "I have to try to stop the war. If I do not, I will carry those deaths with me forever." "Then I am going with you," Caleb declared. "No," Gentle Elk said immediately. "It will be dangerous. You could be killed just for being there." "I do not care," Caleb said flatly. "You said it yourself weeks ago. We are in this together. That means I do not let you walk back into danger alone." "Caleb, please." "No," he interrupted. "Listen to me. I let fear make my decisions for too long. I was afraid to stand up to my family, so I just ran away. I was afraid to fight for what I believed, so I disappeared. I am not doing that anymore." He took her hands in his. "You are the best thing that has happened to me in years. I am not losing you because I was too afraid to stand beside you." Gentle Elk looked at him with such intensity it was almost painful. "You could die." "We all die eventually," Caleb said. "Question is what we do before that happens. I choose this. I choose you." She kissed him then, sudden and fierce and desperate. It was their first kiss, and it tasted like tears and determination, and the beginning of something that could survive anything. When they finally pulled apart, Gentle Elk rested her forehead against his. "You are the strangest, most stubborn white man I have ever met." "I will take that as a compliment," Caleb said, echoing their first conversation. They sat by the river until dark, planning and worrying and finding strength in each other. When they returned to the boarding house, Mrs. Holder took one look at them and sighed. "You are leaving, are not you?" "We have to," Gentle Elk said, "but we will come back if we can." Mrs. Holder nodded slowly. "Then you better come back. I have 6 dresses that need hemming and nobody else who can do them right." It was as close to affection as the stern woman usually got, and Gentle Elk hugged her impulsively. Mrs. Holder stiffened, then awkwardly patted her back. The next morning, Caleb told Thomas he needed to leave for a while. Thomas did not ask questions, just paid him what he was owed and told him the job would be there when he got back. "If you get back," Thomas added. "Wherever you are going looks dangerous from the way you are acting." "It might be," Caleb admitted, "but I have to go." "Then you are either brave or stupid," Thomas said. "Probably both. Good luck, son." When the 3 Apache warriors returned, they were surprised to find Caleb waiting alongside Gentle Elk with his horse saddled and supplies packed. "Who is this?" the lead warrior demanded. "This is Caleb Frost," Gentle Elk said firmly. "He comes with me, or I do not come at all." The warriors conferred in Apache, their voices too low for Caleb to hear. Finally, the leader turned back. "He can come, but if he causes problems, he will be sent away, or worse." "He will not cause problems," Gentle Elk promised. They rode out of Montana City heading south, and Caleb felt like he was riding toward either his salvation or his doom. Possibly both. The journey took 5 days of hard riding through increasingly rugged terrain. The warriors, whose names were Kuruk, Takoda, and Nkosi, maintained a distant but not hostile attitude toward Caleb. They watched him constantly, assessing this white man who had somehow earned Gentle Elk's loyalty. On the third night, Kuruk approached Caleb as he tended his horse. "Why do you do this? Why risk yourself for her people who are not your people?" "Because she is my people now," Caleb said simply. "Where she goes, I go." Kuruk studied him with unreadable eyes. "You care for her." It was not a question, but Caleb answered anyway. "Yes, I care for her very much." "Does she care for you the same way?" "You would have to ask her," Caleb said. "But I hope so." Kuruk nodded slowly. "The white men I have known do not speak like you, they do not act like you. You are either very different or very good at lying." "I am just trying to be better than the example I was given," Caleb replied. Something shifted in Kuruk's expression. "That is all any of us can do." He walked away, leaving Caleb to wonder if he had just made an ally or simply avoided making an enemy. They reached the Apache settlement on the afternoon of the 5th day. It was smaller than Caleb had expected, maybe 70 people living in wickiups spread across a protected valley. Women stopped their work to stare as they rode in. Children ran alongside briefly before their mothers called them back. Warriors emerged from shelters, hands on weapons, watching this white stranger with suspicion. And then an older man stepped forward, and Caleb knew immediately this was Gentle Elk's father. The resemblance was clear in the facial structure and the way they both held themselves with the same rigid pride. "Gamuwa," the chief said. His voice was carefully neutral, giving nothing away. "Father," Gentle Elk replied, and Caleb heard a world of hurt in that single word. "You came." "I came to stop a war, not for you, never for you after what you did." The chief's face tightened. "You dishonored our family, dishonored our people." "I loved someone," Gentle Elk shot back. "That is all. I loved someone who was supposed to be my enemy, and yes, maybe that was foolish. But casting me out, throwing away your daughter, that was the real dishonor." The gathered people murmured, and Caleb saw that this was not a private conversation despite the personal nature. Everything here was witnessed. Everything mattered to the community. "We will speak of this later," the chief said. "First, there is the matter of the war council. Representatives from the other tribe arrive tomorrow. You must tell them what you know." "And then," Gentle Elk demanded, "do I leave again? Am I only useful when you need something from me?" Her father looked uncomfortable for the first time. "We will speak of this later," he repeated. Gentle Elk's laugh was bitter. "Of course we will." She turned to Caleb. "Come, I will show you where we can stay." As they walked away, Caleb could feel dozens of eyes on his back. He was the outsider here, the white man in an Apache settlement at a time when tensions between peoples were already high. One wrong move, one perceived insult, and he could spark the very violence they were here to prevent. Gentle Elk led him to a wickiup on the edge of the settlement. "This is where I used to live before." She did not finish the sentence. "I do not know if they will let me stay here again, but for now it should be safe." They settled in as the sun set, and gradually people began to approach. First came an older woman who embraced Gentle Elk with tears streaming down her face. "My daughter," she whispered. "My daughter, you came back." "Mother," Gentle Elk said, and now she was crying too. "I missed you so much." "I am sorry," her mother said. "I am so sorry. I should have fought for you. I should have stood against your father's decision." "You could not have changed his mind," Gentle Elk said gently. "I know that." Her mother pulled back, looking at Caleb for the first time. "And who is this?" "This is Caleb. He found me after I was cast out. He has been helping me survive." Gentle Elk hesitated. "He means a great deal to me." Her mother's eyes widened slightly, understanding the implications. "I see. Well, Caleb, you are welcome in my daughter's home. Anyone who helped her when we could not deserves respect." Other people came after that, mostly women and elders who had known Gentle Elk her whole life. Some were warm, others reserved, but all were curious about this white cowboy who had accompanied her home. Caleb tried to be respectful, speaking little and listening much, aware that he was being judged with every word and gesture. As night fell and they were finally alone, Gentle Elk leaned against Caleb with exhaustion. "Thank you for being here. I do not think I could face this alone." "You are not alone," Caleb said, wrapping his arm around her. "Not anymore. Not ever again if I have anything to say about it." They held each other in the darkness, finding comfort in presence when words were insufficient. The next day brought the Peace Council. Representatives from Nayati's tribe arrived mid-morning, a group of 7 men led by an elder named Hanan who had known Nayati since birth. The 2 tribes gathered in a central area, tension crackling in the air like lightning before a storm. Gentle Elk was called to speak first. She stood before both groups and told the truth. That she and Nayati had loved each other, that they had been planning to run away together, that she had not witnessed his death, but knew he would never betray his people despite loving her. "He was killed by someone who wanted to stop our love," Gentle Elk said. "Someone who thought the old hatreds were more important than 2 people's happiness. But I do not know if that person was from my tribe or yours. I only know that Nayati would never have wanted his death to cause more death. He wanted peace. He believed we could move past the old wars." Hanan listened with a grave expression. When Gentle Elk finished, he stood. "I believe you speak truly. Nayati told me of his love for you before he died. He was happy in a way I had not seen him before." The old man's voice roughened with grief. "But someone killed him, and we need to know who. We need justice for his death." "And if you do not get it," Gentle Elk's father challenged, "will you seek revenge against innocents? Would you not do the same if your child was murdered?" Hanan shot back. The council devolved into arguments, voices rising as old grievances were aired alongside new accusations. Caleb watched from the edge, feeling helpless. This was not his world, not his place to speak. But then he saw Gentle Elk's face, saw the despair there, and could not stay silent. "Excuse me," he called out, and the arguing stopped. Everyone turned to stare at the white stranger who dared interrupt. "You do not have voice here," one of the warriors said coldly. "Maybe not," Caleb agreed, "but I have something to say anyway, and you can decide if it is worth hearing." He stepped forward, acutely aware of how dangerous this moment was. "I do not know your peoples or your history. I do not know the details of the wars you have fought or the reasons for your hatred. But I do know what it looks like when people choose violence, because it is easier than the alternative." He had everyone's attention now, though he could not tell if it was hostile or merely curious. "I come from the East, where we just finished a war that killed more than 500,000 people. We killed each other over whether some people had the right to own other people. And you know what we got for all that death? More hatred, more pain. The war is over, but the wounds keep bleeding because we cannot let go of our anger." Caleb looked at Gentle Elk's father, then at Hanan. "Nayati and Gentle Elk tried to show you a different way. They tried to prove that love could cross the boundaries you had drawn. And instead of celebrating that, instead of seeing it as hope, both your peoples punished them for it. You cast Gentle Elk out. Someone murdered Nayati. And now you want to kill more people in their names. You know nothing of what you speak, someone shouted. Maybe not, Caleb said. But I know that Gentle Elk still hurts every day from losing Nayati. I know that her father threw her away like she meant nothing. I know that both of you had chances to choose differently, and you did not. So I guess my question is, how many more people have to suffer before you decide that maybe, just maybe, Nayati and Gentle Elk were right? Silence fell over the gathering. Caleb could feel his heart pounding, could feel how precarious this moment was. He had either helped or made everything worse, and he would not know which until someone decided. Finally, Hanan spoke. This white man speaks with strange wisdom. He is right that we have choices. The old man looked at Gentle Elk's father. Perhaps we should investigate Nayati's death together. Both are tribes working to find the truth. That way justice can be found without war. Gentle Elk's father was silent for a long time, then he nodded slowly. I agree. We will work together to find who killed Nayati, and we will punish them according to our laws, not through warfare. It was not a complete resolution, but it was a start. The tension eased slightly as the two groups began discussing how to proceed with a joint investigation. Caleb stepped back, feeling drained, and found Gentle Elk beside him. That was either very brave or very foolish, she whispered. Probably both, Caleb admitted. Did I help or make things worse? You helped, Gentle Elk assured him. You said what needed to be said, even though you had no obligation to speak. Over the following days, warriors from both tribes worked together to investigate Nayati's death. They interviewed witnesses, examined the place where his body had been found, and slowly pieced together what had happened. Caleb and Gentle Elk stayed in the settlement, waiting to see what the investigation would reveal. During that time, Gentle Elk reconnected with her mother and others she had been close to. Her father kept his distance, and Caleb could see the pain that caused her. But she focused on the relationships that could be repaired rather than the one that might be broken beyond fixing. Caleb also found an unexpected ally in Kuruk, who sought him out one evening. You surprised me, the warrior admitted. I did not think a white man could speak wisdom to our peoples. But you did. I just said what I thought was true, Caleb replied. I am tired of seeing people hurt each other over things that should not matter. You care deeply for Gamua, Kuruk observed. Anyone can see it in how you look at her. Caleb did not deny it. I love her. I know that might be complicated given everything, but it is the truth. Love is always complicated, Kuruk said with a slight smile. That is what makes it worth having. He paused. If you stay with her, your life will not be easy. My people do not fully trust white men, and your people do not accept Apache women. You will be outsiders wherever you go. We are already outsiders, Caleb pointed out. Might as well be outsiders together. Kuruk laughed. You have a good heart, Caleb Frost. I hope you and Gamua find happiness together. The investigation concluded after 8 days. The Joint Council gathered again, and this time the atmosphere was different, less charged with imminent violence. Hanan stood to deliver the findings. We have discovered who killed Nayati. It was a young warrior from my tribe named Chaitin. He believed Nayati was betraying our people by loving someone from another tribe. He acted alone, without the knowledge or approval of anyone else. A murmur ran through the gathering. Chaitin has confessed to his crime. According to our laws, he will be exiled for taking a life without cause. He will leave our territory and never return. Gentle Elk's father stood as well. This is just, the exile of the guilty rather than war against the innocent. We accept this resolution. It was over. The threat of war had been averted, and truth had been found without more bloodshed. Caleb felt relief wash through him, though he knew this was just the beginning for him and Gentle Elk. They still had to decide what came next. That evening, Gentle Elk's father finally approached them. He looked older than he had when they arrived, worn down by the events of the past weeks. "Gamua," he said formally, "you have helped prevent a war. You have brought honor back to your name." "I have always had honor," Gentle Elk replied coolly. "You were the one who did not see it." Her father flinched. "Yes, I was wrong to cast you out. I let anger and fear guide me instead of love for my daughter." He took a breath. "I am asking you to come back, to rejoin the tribe. You will have your place here again." Caleb felt his stomach drop. This was what Gentle Elk had lost, what she had been grieving. Her father was offering to restore everything, her home, her people, her identity. How could he ask her to give that up for him? But Gentle Elk was already shaking her head. "No." Her father looked stunned. "No." "But this is what you wanted, to come home." "I wanted you to realize you were wrong," Gentle Elk corrected. "I wanted you to see that love is not betrayal, but coming home." She reached for Caleb's hand. "I have found a new home, one I chose for myself. With this white man." Her father's voice was strained. "With Caleb, yes. He found me when I had nothing. He shared what little he had without asking anything in return. He stood beside me when I came back here, even though it put him in danger. He loves me not despite who I am, but because of who I am." Gentle Elk's voice was steady and sure. "I love him too. So no, Father, I will not stay here. I am going back to Montana City with him." Her father looked between them, and Caleb could see him struggling to accept this. "You are choosing exile again, choosing to live outside your people." "I am choosing freedom," Gentle Elk said. "I am choosing to build a life on my own terms. And yes, I am choosing him. Just like I chose Nayati because love matters more than boundaries." There was a long silence. Then Gentle Elk's mother stepped forward, placing her hand on her husband's arm. "Let her go," she said softly. "Let her go with your blessing this time instead of your curse. She has earned that much." The chief's shoulders sagged. "You are right, about all of it." He looked at Gentle Elk with something like regret. "I have been a poor father. I let pride and tradition matter more than my daughter's happiness. I cannot undo what I did, but I can at least not make it worse." He turned to Caleb. "You will take care of her, with my life," Caleb promised, "and you will honor her people, her ways, always." The chief nodded slowly. "Then you have my blessing, both of you. May you find the happiness that Nayati and Gamua never got to share." It was not a full reconciliation, too much hurt for that, but it was closure. It was acknowledgement of mistakes and permission to move forward. Gentle Elk embraced her mother with tears streaming down her face, and her father placed his hand briefly on her head in a gesture of blessing that made her weep harder. They left the next morning, riding out as the sun rose over the mountains. Kuruk and several others accompanied them to the edge of the territory, a mark of respect and protection. "Come back and visit," Kuruk said as they prepared to part ways. "You will always be welcome here, both of you." "We will," Gentle Elk promised. "Thank you for everything." They rode north toward Montana City, toward the life they had started building together. The journey felt different this time, lighter somehow, as if they had shed weights they had been carrying since the day they met. On the third night, they made camp near a stream, and as they sat by the fire, Caleb finally said what had been building inside him since the moment her father offered to take her back. "I love you," he said simply. "I should have said it before now, but I was afraid. Afraid you would not feel the same way. Afraid I was just convenient for you because you had lost Nayati. But I do not care anymore. I love you, Gentle Elk. I love your strength and your courage and the way you refuse to let the world break you. I love how you see the best in people even after they have hurt you. I love everything about you." Gentle Elk was crying, but she was smiling too. "You are a fool, Caleb Frost. I have loved you since the day you said my people were yours. I have loved you through every walk and every conversation and every moment we have shared. I loved you even when I was afraid to admit it because it felt like betraying Nayati's memory." "And now," Caleb asked, "now I know that Nayati would want me to be happy. He would want me to love again. And I do." She moved closer, taking his face in her hands. "I love you, Caleb. I love you with everything I have." They kissed under a canopy of stars, and it felt like a promise, like a beginning, like everything they had survived had been leading them to this moment. They reached Montana City on a warm afternoon in late September. Mrs. Holder greeted them with her usual stern expression that could not quite hide her relief. "About time you got back. Those dresses are not going to hem themselves." Thomas gave Caleb his job back without question. Just a gruff, "Good to have you back," and a knowing look at how he and Gentle Elk stood close together. They fell back into their rhythms, but now it was different. Now they moved through their days with the certainty of people who had chosen each other, who had fought for that choice and won. They still took evening walks, but now they walked hand in hand openly, not caring who saw or what anyone thought. One evening in October, Caleb took Gentle Elk to their spot by the river. The air was crisp with the promise of winter, and the mountains were already white-capped with early snow. "I have something to ask you," Caleb said, and his hands were shaking slightly with nerves. "I know we have not been together that long, not officially, and I know that marriage might be complicated given everything, but I do not care about any of that." He pulled a simple gold band from his pocket. "I bought this from the jeweler in town. Used most of my savings, but I figured it was worth it. Gentle Elk, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me here in Montana City? Will you let me love you for the rest of our days?" Gentle Elk was crying again, but her smile was radiant. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they held each other as the sun set over the mountains. Two people who had been cast out by their worlds and had found a new world in each other. They were married 3 weeks later by a judge who did not care about their different backgrounds, just that they loved each other and were of legal age to marry. Mrs. Holder stood as witness along with Thomas, and afterwards there was a small celebration at the boarding house with cake and coffee and warmth. That night, in the small room they now officially shared, they made love for the first time. It was tender and awkward and perfect, two people learning each other with patience and care. Afterward they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, and Gentle Elk traced patterns on Caleb's chest. "What do you think happens now?" she asked softly. "Now we live," Caleb said. "We work and we love each other and we build something that is ours. No one can take that from us because we are choosing it together." "No one can take it from us," Gentle Elk agreed. "Not our fathers, not our peoples, not anyone." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time in longer than either could remember, neither of them had nightmares. The months turned into years, and Montana City grew around them. They saved money carefully, and eventually they bought a small piece of land on the edge of town where they built a house with both their hands. It was not much, but it was theirs. A bedroom, a main room with a fireplace, and a workshop where Gentle Elk could sew and Caleb could work leather when he was not at the stable. Thomas retired in the spring of 1880 and offered to sell Caleb the stable for a price they could just barely afford. They borrowed money from Mrs. Holder, who had softened considerably over the years, and now treated them like the children she had never had. Caleb became his own boss, and business thrived because people trusted his way with horses. Gentle Elk's sewing business also grew. She hired 2 younger women to help with the increasing work, and her designs became known throughout the territory. People came from as far as Helena to commission dresses and shirts from the Apache seamstress, who could make anything beautiful. They visited Gentle Elk's tribe twice a year, and slowly the relationship with her father improved. It would never be what it once was, too much damage for that, but they found a careful peace. Her mother doted on them both, and Kuruk became a true friend who stayed with them whenever he was in Montana City. In the winter of 1881, Gentle Elk discovered she was pregnant. She told Caleb on a snowy evening as they sat by their fireplace, and he wept with joy. They had talked about children but never quite dared to hope, afraid that fate would take this happiness from them too. "We are going to have a baby," Gentle Elk said, wonder in her voice. "A child who is both Apache and white, both our peoples joined together." "A child who will know they are loved," Caleb added, "no matter what. A child who we will never cast out, never turn away." Their son was born in late summer of 1882, a healthy boy with dark hair and his mother's eyes. They named him Nathan, which meant gift, because that was what he was. A gift they had never expected but treasured more than anything. Caleb proved to be a devoted father, getting up for nighttime feedings and changing diapers without complaint. He sang lullabies his own mother had sung to him once, reclaiming those memories and making them new. Gentle Elk nursed their son and told him stories from her childhood, teaching him the Apache language alongside English so he would know both sides of his heritage. Mrs. Holder became an honorary grandmother, appearing with knitted blankets and advice that was sometimes helpful and sometimes ridiculous, but always given with love. Thomas made a rocking horse for Nathan, even though the boy was far too young to ride it yet. The community that had once viewed Caleb and Gentle Elk with suspicion now embraced them fully, seeing their love and dedication and recognizing the good they brought to Montana City. When Nathan was 2 years old, Gentle Elk became pregnant again. Their daughter Sarah was born in the spring of 1885, a tiny fierce thing who had her father's stubbornness and her mother's strength. With 2 children, their little house felt full to bursting with life and noise and joy. Caleb expanded the stable, hiring help so he could spend more time with his family. Gentle Elk cut back on sewing commissions, taking only special projects that truly interested her. They had enough money now to live comfortably, and they both agreed that time with Nathan and Sarah mattered more than anything else. The children grew up knowing they were loved by parents who had chosen each other against all odds. They heard the story of how Caleb had found Gentle Elk on the edge of a canyon, how he had offered his people when hers had been taken away. They learned that love was stronger than tradition, that family was who you chose, and that being different was something to celebrate rather than hide. In 1887, Gentle Elk's father died. They traveled south for the funeral, bringing Nathan and Sarah so they could say goodbye to the grandfather they had only met a handful of times. The old chief's last words to Gentle Elk had been an apology, a final acknowledgement that he had been wrong and she had been right. It was not enough to erase the hurt, but it was something. At the funeral, Hanan approached them. The old man from Nayati's tribe had also aged, his face lined with years and wisdom. "Your children are beautiful," he said to Gentle Elk. "Nayati would have been happy to see you so loved." "Thank you," Gentle Elk said softly. "I think about him sometimes, about what could have been." "Do not think too much on what could have been," Hanan advised. "You have what is, and it is good. You built the life that you and Nayati dreamed of just with someone else. That is not betrayal. That is survival and strength." They returned to Montana City with a sense of closure. The past had been acknowledged and laid to rest. What remained was the future, bright and full of possibility. Years continued to pass. Nathan grew tall and serious, with a gift for working with horses that rivaled his father's. Sarah was bold and creative, with her mother's eye for beauty and design. They were good children who sometimes fought like all siblings did, but who fundamentally loved each other. In 1892, Gentle Elk's mother came to live with them. She was aging and no longer able to care for herself alone, and Gentle Elk refused to let her spend her final years with anyone but family. The house was cramped with 6 people, but they made it work. The children adored their grandmother, who told them stories of the old ways and taught them skills that would otherwise have been lost. When Gentle Elk's mother died peacefully in her sleep 2 years later, the whole town turned out for her funeral. She had become a beloved figure in Montana City, the grandmother who remembered everyone's names and always had kind words. Gentle Elk grieved, but was grateful her mother had spent her last years surrounded by love. Nathan married at 22 to a school teacher named Elizabeth who loved him for his quiet strength and gentle nature. Sarah showed no interest in marriage, instead opening her own dress shop in town and becoming known as the finest seamstress in Montana. Both children stayed close to home, building their lives near their parents rather than running from them. Caleb and Gentle Elk grew older together, their hair graying and their bodies slowing, but their love never diminished. They still took evening walks when the weather allowed, still sat by the fire sharing stories and silence. They had built something beautiful out of rejection and loss, had created a family from nothing but will and love. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1901, they returned to the spot where Caleb had first proposed. The river still flowed, the mountains still rose against the sky, and Montana City had grown into a proper town with schools and churches and a sense of permanence. "You ever regret it?" Caleb asked as they sat on the riverbank. "Choosing me instead of going back to your people?" "Never," Gentle Elk said firmly. "Not for one moment. You gave me a life I chose for myself. You gave me children who know they are loved. You gave me 20 years of being seen and valued and cherished. How could I regret any of that? I suppose I still worry sometimes that I took you from something better," Caleb admitted. "You took me from nothing," Gentle Elk corrected. "I had been cast out, remember? I was alone on a cliff with my life scattered on the rocks below. You offered me hope when I had none. You offered me yourself with all your own wounds and fears, and you never asked me to be anything but who I was." She took his hand, their fingers fitting together as perfectly as they had 20 years ago. "I loved Naati. I will always love him in a way because he was my first love. But Caleb, you are the love that saved me. You are the love that built me back up and gave me a reason to keep going. That is worth more than anything I lost." Caleb kissed her softly, tasting salt and sweetness and 2 decades of devotion. "Then I am the luckiest man who ever lived." "We are both lucky," Gentle Elk said. "We found each other when we most needed finding. We built something beautiful out of brokenness. Not everyone gets that." They sat together as the sun set, 2 people who had been cast out by their respective worlds and had made a new world together. Around them, Montana City buzzed with evening activity. Their children were grown and making their own ways. Their grandchildren would come soon, Nathan and Elizabeth expecting their first child in just a few months. The future stretched out full of promise and peace, built on the foundation of that first moment when a lonely cowboy had told a cast-out Apache woman that his people were hers. It had been a simple offer, made without thought of cost or consequence. It had become everything. As darkness fell and stars emerged overhead, they walked home hand in hand, still choosing each other with every step. They had survived rejection and embraced acceptance. They had weathered doubt and built certainty. They had taken nothing and made it everything. Their story was not one of dramatic rescues or grand gestures. It was simpler than that, and somehow more profound. It was the story of two people who had lost everything finding each other and deciding that was enough, that they could build a life from nothing if they built it together. And they had. Through hard work and dedication, through compromise and communication, through love that grew deeper with every passing year, they had created a family, a home, a legacy that would outlive them both. Nathan and Elizabeth's son was born in the spring of 1902, a healthy boy they named Caleb in honor of his grandfather. When they brought the baby to meet his namesake, Caleb Frost held his grandson with tears streaming down his face. "Look at what we made," he whispered to Gentle Elk. "Look at what came from that day on the cliff." "I am looking," she said, her own eyes wet. "I see everything we built. I see our future continuing." They raised that grandson as they had raised their own children, with love and acceptance, and the understanding that family was chosen as much as given. Young Caleb grew up hearing stories about how his grandparents had met, how they had defied their peoples to build something new. He learned that courage came in many forms, and that the strongest love was the kind that endured. Sarah eventually married at 32, surprising everyone. She chose a traveling merchant named Joseph who appreciated her independence and never asked her to be anything but herself. They had two daughters who inherited their mother's creativity and their grandmother's strength. The stable continued to thrive, now run mostly by Nathan, but with Caleb still helping when his aging body allowed. The dress shop flourished with both Gentle Elk and Sarah's designs becoming sought after throughout Montana. The house they had built together stood solid and welcoming, always full of family and laughter. In 1910, Montana City celebrated its 50th anniversary as an incorporated town. Caleb and Gentle Elk were honored as founding citizens, people who had helped shape the community into what it had become. At the ceremony, they stood together on a platform while the mayor gave a speech about progress and perseverance. "These two people represent the best of what we can be," the mayor said. "They came from different worlds, faced prejudice and hardship, but they never gave up on each other or on this town. They built businesses that employed dozens of people. They raised children who became pillars of our community. They showed us that family is not about blood or tradition, but about love and commitment." The crowd applauded, and Caleb felt Gentle Elk's hand tighten in his. They had not sought recognition, had just tried to live good lives. But it was nice to be acknowledged, to have their journey seen and valued. That night, surrounded by children and grandchildren in the house they had built, they shared wine and stories and memories. Young Caleb, now 8 years old, climbed into his grandfather's lap and asked the question he had asked many times before. "Tell me again how you met Grandma." Caleb looked at Gentle Elk across the crowded room, and she smiled at him with all the love of 3 decades together. "Well," he began, "it was a day that changed my life forever. I was riding through the Montana Territory, lonely and lost, when I saw a woman standing on a cliff's edge." As he told the story once more, emphasizing different details for the child's enjoyment, Gentle Elk listened and remembered. She remembered the despair she had felt that day, the certainty that her life was over. She remembered this strange cowboy who had offered everything without knowing her. She remembered the journey that had brought them here, to this moment, surrounded by the family they had created. It had not been easy. There had been hard times, lean winters, and moments when they wondered if they would make it. There had been people who judged them for their mixed marriage, who whispered behind their backs or refused their business. There had been losses and griefs that seemed too heavy to bear, but there had also been joy, so much joy. Morning coffee shared in comfortable silence, children's laughter filling their home, quiet evenings by the fire. The steady accumulation of days that became weeks, that became years, that became a lifetime. They had taken the worst moments of their lives and transformed them into something beautiful. They had proven that love could survive anything, could bridge any divide, could build something lasting out of broken pieces. As the evening grew late and family members began heading to their own homes, Caleb and Gentle Elk stood on their porch watching them go. Nathan helped his mother down the steps while his children ran ahead. Sarah kissed both her parents goodnight, her husband waiting patiently by their wagon. When everyone had gone and the house was quiet again, Caleb and Gentle Elk climbed into the bed they had shared for 3 decades. Their bodies fit together perfectly after all these years, curves and angles matching up like pieces of a puzzle. "I love you," Caleb murmured into the darkness. "I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "I love you too," Gentle Elk replied. "You are the best choice I ever made. The best thing that ever happened to me." They fell asleep holding each other, two people who had been cast out by their worlds and had created a better world together. Outside, Montana City slept peacefully. Inside, a love that had started with a simple offer of shared humanity continued to burn bright, warming everyone it touched. Their story was one of survival and hope, of finding family in unexpected places and building home from nothing. It was proof that the worst moments could lead to the best outcomes, that being cast out could mean being set free, and that love offered without condition could grow into something that sustained generations. And as they dreamed together in the house they had built with their own hands, surrounded by memories of a life well lived, they knew that they had succeeded in the only thing that truly mattered. They had loved each other well. They had created a family that would carry their legacy forward. They had taken brokenness and made it whole. They had found each other in the wilderness, two lost souls who became each other's salvation. And from that moment of desperate hope had grown a love story that would be told by their grandchildren and great-grandchildren for years to come. A story about an Apache woman who said her people cast her out, and a lonely cowboy who replied that then his people were hers. It was a promise kept across 3 decades. It was a love that endured every test. It was the best kind of ending, which was really just another beginning, stretching forward into a future bright with possibility, and filled with the family they had chosen to create together.